Hey, everybody. Thanks for being with us today. My name is Chris Watson. I'm the Director of Communications for the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, and we want to welcome you to this special event in collaboration with NISPA, the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee, Students Against Destructive Decisions, and a special thanks to the Buffalo Bills. The goal of today is to demonstrate and educate what can happen when you are distracted, whether it be in life or behind the wheel. If you were with us last week, our first special featured speaker was Karen Torres, who had a powerful story about how distracted driving took the life of her father. This week, we are joined by J.C. Good, who is also a very powerful impact speaker who will talk to you about the decisions and the impact of destructive decisions and distracted driving. J.C., thanks for being with us, and I'll let you have the floor.
Thank you so much. So my name is J.C., and I got to start this storytelling when I was a high school athlete. So if we can see the first picture of me excelling I played softball my whole life. I joined the volleyball team when I got to high school and quickly got cut from the volleyball team, but the cross country team accepts new runners the whole season. So I started running and absolutely loved being a runner. I had this goal of going to college, but if I was going to do that, I needed to get scholarships. You know, my mom was a teacher and my dad was a mechanic, so I needed to pay for college. It worked. I graduated number 9 in my class of 300 kids. I got into my dream college. It was Muhlenberg College in Allentown, Pennsylvania, an hour and a half from where I grew up. And in this next picture, you'll see I moved to college and made my very first friend, this cute boy from upstate New York named Steve. He lived, I think, 4 doors down the hallway from me. We were in the same honors program, and I had a new friend in college. I quickly realized that that cute kid from New York was trying to make me his girlfriend, which was upsetting for me, but I think I caved pretty quickly. He was really sweet, and he was cute, and we started dating, ended up being together all 4 years of college, so that by the time graduation day rolled around in this next picture, Steve and I had our lives together planned. I had gotten hired for a job in Brooklyn. I would work for Habitat for Humanity, live with my best girlfriend for a year. Steve and I would get married and buy a house, have those kids we had spent the last 4 years of life talking about. My parents and I just had this really easy 90-minute drive to make back home to my childhood home. You know, the last time we'd make that trip after so many times over 4 years in college. And unfortunately, we never made it home on that afternoon. We were in a car crash, and the next photo that was taken of me is in the intensive care unit. My feet are broken, my left leg was broken, my wrist was broken, collarbone is broken, my pelvis was shattered, severely damaged liver, carotid arteries in here were like almost severed. My lungs are collapsed, and I had a traumatic brain injury. Doctors gave me about a 10% chance of living through the first night in the hospital. I lived through 2 months in that hospital through injuries that those doctors did not think would be survivable. But after 2 months, I was stable enough. I could move into a rehabilitation hospital. So in this next picture, you'll see I'm relearning how to live life, literally figuring out how to feed myself independently, or taking a couple of steps, trying to get back the life that I had worked to build for myself. And I was lucky. My brain was healing incredibly well. All those broken and shattered bones healed slowly. After 2 months in that first hospital, I was released so I could move home, which meant back to my childhood home, my parents' home. And it isn't until this point I started to understand what my brother had told me dozens of times over the past 4 months. Mom and Dad in this next picture had been in the same car as me. Neither of them made it out. We were in a car crash. Mom and Dad were killed on impact. I didn't understand. It hurt too much to be true. I think I needed to understand what had happened in that car crash. Like, I had never been any kind of car incident, anything. I knew my dad was driving. He is the safest driver there ever was. What happens to my family? I Googled my own name. I found the news stories. I learned that we were driving south on this really easy, this road is 1 lane in each direction. It's 45 miles an hour. Every big intersection has a light. So we're driving south. We've got a green light. And at the same time going north is this semi truck. He's got a green light too. So we were about to pass each other. But at the same time on the intersecting road coming to a red light was a high school senior. He was a good kid. He's 18 years old. He's going to graduate in a couple of weeks. He was talking on his phone. He was looking out the windshield, but his brain wasn't really paying attention. He saw the red light that he came to and he stopped, but then he turned left through that red light because he was so distracted. That truck driver swerved, trying to miss a car pulling out in front of him. He still clipped that young man's car. The truck driver lost control, and it was my family's car that the truck ended up hitting. In this next picture, you'll see the high schooler was in that blue minivan. A whole lot of things came together, like perfectly, amazingly right to get me out of that white pile of metal in the background. Half a mile down the road lived this middle-aged man who I didn't know, but he's a volunteer paramedic. His name was Dave. He heard the crash. He jumped in the car, hoping that he could come and help. The truck driver and the high schooler were beat up. You know, they had bumps and bruises, but they were both stable. That paramedic, Dave, came to our car. The truck had just picked up 30 tons of milk. Dad took all of that force. Dave assures me that nothing my dad could have done would have kept him alive. My mom, on the other hand, Mom was in the back passenger seat, so the farthest from impact, so the likeliest to be okay, except she did not have her seatbelt on. And it's something that will haunt me for the rest of my life. If I would still have a mom, if she had a seatbelt on, something I'll never know, but it hurts. I'm in the front passenger seat. I had my seatbelt on. Dave said that seatbelt kept me in the car. It kept me alive. I had a really strong pulse, but I wasn't breathing and would have died right there too, except for this stranger coming to help, keeping me alive. Where we are on this road, you can see it's out in the boonies, but 3 years before this happened, just 11 miles down the road, they built a trauma hospital, which is the only one in that whole county. All of these things coming together so incredibly perfectly to keep me alive, because when a tragedy like this happens, it doesn't only impact the people in the cars. You know, it's that truck driver and his wife and his 19-year-old daughter, or that high school senior and all his friends and teachers and classmates. Or I look at my family in this next picture. I always need to remember how lucky I am. You know, my family was cut in half, but it's not only us. I was so lucky that I had my seatbelt on. I did survive, unlike either of my parents or my big brother, Jared, in that picture next to me. Jared was at my graduation that morning, but he's a couple years older, so he had driven himself to my graduation. He was back home already. Now he's getting a phone call that both of our parents had been killed that afternoon. He needs to take this worst news he's ever received. Calling our 80-year-old grandparents, tell them their child was gone. He's got to identify these bodies in a morgue just a few hours after this picture was taken. He's planning funerals for both of our parents while I was in a coma in the hospital through all of it, which it's awful. I don't get to go to my own parents' funerals, but I think I'm lucky I was in a coma in the hospital versus what my brother was going through. I don't know how he did it. But then I think about all of the other people. I could tell so many stories about my own family, but it's the fact that my mom teaches 8th grade English. The next day was Monday, and that lady up there is Mrs. Good, who's the teacher everyone loves. And Mrs. Good was always smiling, and Mrs. Good was killed yesterday. Hundreds and hundreds of lives impacted. And I guess as I'm figuring all of this out, trying to understand how this impacts everything for the rest of my life. We can go to the next picture where every day is so hard for me. You know, I have a brain injury. I don't have the brain cells that know how to move half my body. I can't move my wrist or my fingers. It's my ankle and my toes. The things I used to love to do. You know, as I said, I played softball my whole life. My favorite thing to do was to go out and throw a baseball around. And I'll never get to do that again because of a phone. Like, I can't run. I can't ride a bicycle. You think about all the things that you do every day, and then imagine doing it with half of what you've got. And I guess, again, I need to take it back to how lucky I am. Every day is hard, but I am so lucky I woke up this morning. Like, I woke up, I took a shower, I got dressed, I made this ponytail with one hand, which takes like a lot of years to figure out how to do with any kind of decent appearance. So lucky that in this picture, that's that very cute kid that I met on the first day of college, stuck around through months of me not knowing who he was, through hospitals, through trying to figure out how our lives could ever move forward. And life didn't go as we planned it, you know, on graduation day when we were certain that we'd be engaged and married and have a bunch of kids by now. But this picture was back in 2013. So we kept our wedding under a decade, which was an accomplishment given everything that was going on. I'm so lucky that I am able to tell this story. I don't want this story, but I've been able to build a career trying to bring some kind of positivity to this world. And so I guess I share this story hoping that we can all use these awful stories that are out there and maybe stop them from happening again. Because as the last year has shown us, this life is hard enough on its own. You know, hundreds of thousands of people have lost their lives over something that we couldn't really control a lot of it. But if we get in the car every single time, we take that second thought and we think, you know, I have the chance to be a little bit kinder, to be a little bit safer by making the choice to go the speed limit, making the choice to wear my seatbelt, making the choice not to drive if I'm sleepy or intoxicated, making the choice that I'm not going to make my phone more important than somebody else's life. And I'm going to make the world just a little bit better by making that choice. That's my biggest goal in sharing this story.
JC, I don't know, I don't know how many times you've told the story. I don't know how many presentations you've done. But knowing a little bit about your background and the crusade that you're on, I think I said the same thing to Karen Torres last week. The story you tell never gets easier, but I'm sure somewhere down deep to know that it's impacted people perhaps in a positive way, that they've left with your message in their mind when they get behind the wheel. How much can you take from that?
That's my biggest goal. I think for me, so much of it is about the legacy that my parents left me with, that my mom was all about being kind to everyone you meet. And I learned that as much through everything that I've been through, that, you know, you never know when the person you're sitting next to or the person driving badly next to you, they might be having the worst day of their life. So if you can just be a little bit kinder and offer that patience, that's the legacy that I need to carry on as long as my parents aren't here to live it out themselves.
As somebody who went through, the most horrific thing anyone can experience, and, now, as I said, on the crusade to, really enlighten people as to what can happen. As someone who is, still active and out and you see it every day, I'm sure when you are on the road, be it in a car, as a passenger, whatever it is, you see distractions, you see distracted driving, you see people who are not heeding what you've been preaching for so long. What kind of reaction do you have? Do you get angry? Do you get sad? Do you get frustrated? What does it make you personally feel?
I think a combination of all of those feelings. The thing that I always feel the most is it's sadness. That's when it hurts. You know, I can handle the pain in the day to day. It doesn't bother me so much, but when I'm out on the road and I'm seeing people just taking life for granted, it is so painful. But I just have to think at the same time, they're lucky enough that they haven't felt what this feels like to lose a loved one or to be so severely injured because of a phone. So maybe, unfortunately, it'll just take a little more time for them, for one of these ripples to impact their family or their community even.
Well, JC, I know you've probably heard it hundreds of thousands of times, but thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for, not only being a survivor, but being an advocate, and joining us today, because I, certainly hope that between Karen's presentation a week ago, and yours today, people will take notice of impacts on their decisions. And we just can't thank you enough for sharing your story with us again today.
Yes, thank you so much for the platform to keep helping all of us to move in this direction to be better for everyone around us.
Thanks, JC. I appreciate it. At this time, I want to welcome in Harrison Phillips of the Buffalo Bills, who we got a chance to talk with a week ago, but joins us once again and entering his fourth season with the Bills, drafted in the third round in 2018, a Stanford University graduate, grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. Past year was the Bills winner of the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, one of the most prestigious awards in all of sports. And Harrison, it's nice to see you again, partner. How are you?
Yeah, it's good to be on, and thankfully I was able to get on a little bit ahead of time and was able to hear some of your story, JC. My goodness, that's a horrible, but hopefully so many good things can come from it. Using your platform like this, and you're such a beautiful woman. Just hearing your positivity and optimism about the good change that can happen from this is inspiring.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that last week we got to hear Karen's story. In hearing JC's story, Harrison, what kind of reaction did it bring out in you, and does it trigger something? What does it make you feel when you hear a story like that?
Well, I mean, it definitely pulls on your heart, and it just tries to bring a little bit of grip of, like she said, not everyone has that relationship. It's, oh, I heard of somebody, or the news talked about this car accident or whatever, but to have the opportunity to be face to face on a Zoom call here and to hear kind of from the horse's mouth how real it is and the lasting impacts it has that affects every single, every decision of your life. I mean, you can't go 10 minutes without probably thinking about what that single split second decision of that man being on his phone, the ripple effects that those cause for generations. So it helps bring that a little more home, and really is going to, in my last talk, which we'll probably get about too, one of the things that I still do is distracted driving, and not necessarily with my phone, but eating, drinking a protein shake, thinking about other things. And you just really want to make that conscious decision to pull yourself back, because how crazy these implications can be.
It's funny. I'm glad you brought that up, because it was something I wanted to ask you about. You self-admitted last time when we did the first Zoom together was, hey, sometimes I'm not the best at it. Sometimes I'm distracted, and I need to be better about it. In the week that it's been since we've gotten together, have you either made a conscious effort or thought to yourself, hey, I gotta tighten things up a little bit when I'm behind the wheel?
Yeah, absolutely. Just try, like you said, small little things. For example, making my my MapQuest or whatever, my Google Maps, turning the voice commands on so that I don't have to be staring at the screen to find out when my next turn is. Silencing my phone when I get in the car so I don't even hear it ring or hear it buzz. More if I'm in tune with anything, it'd be with the radio in the car at red lights rather than pulling up the phone at a red light, things like that. Just the small little decisions that, can change lives.
Nice. I appreciate your honesty with that. Like you were last week, you were today. I want you guys to stay on. We're going to go off video and off mute for a second. I want you guys to watch a video, and obviously we've all seen different analytics to show us distractions and what it equates to when you're behind the wheel in real time, in real life. But everybody who's joined us here today, we want to take a look at this video, and then we'll talk about it real quick right after. So everybody hang tight while we take a peek at this. I think one of the things that, we had watched that video before we went on, and we were equating it to the football world, right? 200 feet, 66 yards. You're not a football field, just over half of a football field, and decisions can happen like that. And I know JC's still with us, but it's, I think sometimes you forget how fast it can happen. We're all way too comfortable behind the wheel because we've been doing it for so long that we think we have control over every situation. And it's just, that's not the case when you look at the numbers.
No, not at all. It's crazy. I wasn't aware of those statistics, but you think about how this relates to my profession. I mean, we're talking about split-second decisions, right? You can't even, when we watch a play on film, my hand is swatting for the ball and the quarterback just releases it. We're talking boom, boom, and how big of a change that could be. And I talk about a car moving at 60 miles an hour, 75 miles an hour. Split seconds are all the difference.
Yeah.
Harrison, go ahead,
JC. You said it yourself that we get so comfortable. It's so easy to forget that every day, every one of us goes and gets in a car, and then more of us die doing that than anything else we're all doing in a day's time. So I think if we just kind of bring it back to that, staying present and living in the moment and remembering what's at stake when you get in the car.
I'll ask you both the same question, and I'll start with Harrison, and then JC, you can chime in. Harrison, as a former, you're a professional athlete now, but a former student athlete. JC, yourself as a former student athlete. Impact on coaches in your life. Coaches are often father figures, mother figures, the people that, have maybe more time with you face to face than your own family. The impact that a coach can have on your life, Harrison and JC, when it comes to a message like this coming from somebody else, how impactful can that be? Because I think we have a lot of coaches that'll probably hear this, that'll say, hey, I can pass this along to my kids too.
Yeah, I know for me, it happened, as unfortunate it was, right before I got to high school, we had a senior who was an all-state football player, state placing wrestler who died in a car accident due to texting and driving. And my football coach and wrestling coach were extremely close with that man. Jake Herwire was his name. And so when I first got to high school, it was a very pressing issue amongst our community, right? Smartphones were just getting even more and more popular, being kind of everybody had them. It does mean a lot difference. Mom and dad can always tell you something, big brother, big sister can always tell you something, even teachers, but that relationship you have with the coach is very unique. And hearing it from them definitely leaves a more lasting impact.
Yeah. And I think for me, I can just chime in that my coaches are so much of what turned me into the person I am. And a lot of that is things like the motivation and willpower that you need when you're behind the wheel of a car, that a phone is designed to be really hard to ignore, but through things like sports and that kind of willpower that you learn when you're running 3.5 miles and you don't want to go on, you can push yourself forward. You can apply that in the car too, to make yourself as safe as you can possibly be.
And Harrison, I think back to that, coaches' impacts, words and actions have an impact, especially in a young student athlete. And I think male or female, leading by example is huge too, whether it be a coach or, hey, at a time in your life when you were probably a senior leader or a captain, other people were looking up to you as well. So this is a lead by example type of thing too.
Yeah, absolutely. Peer, chicken or the egg, where can this thing really start? And it starts with you, whatever your role is. If you're a parent, if you're a kid, if you're just going to be 16, if you're the 18-year-old captain on a team, if you're an assistant coach, head coach, whatever it is, it starts with you. And so if that's about your actions, that's the most important thing, kind of leading by example, and then, trying to get the next person in line.
And, JC, I'll close this one for you because, you and I had a chance to talk in the time in between, but I think it's pretty obvious, but I want to hear it from you specifically, the message that you want people to come away, from today's presentation with. And listen, it's a wide group that we're talking to, right? It's student athletes in high school or in schools today. It's their coaches. It's their community leaders within their school. So it's anywhere from a high school, aged kid all the way to adults, that are well past their athletic prime. But there's a message that has to be delivered to everybody.
There's nothing on our phones more important than a human life. And we got to remember that every single time, that even if we are a student athlete or we are the coach, I guess we like to blame young people for this problem. And young people are not innocent, but adults are setting a terrible example. So I think every single one of us needs to set that standard for ourselves to be as incredibly safe as we can so that we can keep all of us safe.
I appreciate it, JC, and your message was well received. So thank you for that. Harrison, before we break, and we've got a couple minutes, and last week we got together and we did the ever popular Rubik's Cube experiment. Do you want to redo? Did you bring it with you? Do you have it in front of you? Did you Rubik's it up again today?
Whatever you ask of me, Chris, I'm just your pawn, man.
That is not true. That is the last thing that's true in any situation. All right, so here's what went down. Harrison's going to shake up the Rubik's Cube. We have him on record as about 90 seconds as his career best. We'll even give him 145. Last week, what we did was we fired questions at him to distract him, to engage him, and then we're going to see if he can beat his best and what distractions can do. So on the mark, we'll have Harrison go. You can start, Harrison. You do the Rubik's Cube. And JC, if you want to chime in with any questions of what you want to know from Harrison, we'll see if he can do it better or worse than usual. Last week, Mr. Phillips, I stumped you, and you need a redo on this. Where is your favorite place to eat?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I'll go Brother Sebastian's or Sullivan's, two steakhouses. But I hoped you were going to re-ask me that one because that stumped me.
See, and who's pawn now? See, I'm doing ads for you and all your friends. This is how it goes down. All right, question 2. Where did Horrible Harry come from? Why is your nickname Horrible Harry?
It started when I was a kid reading a children's book called Horrible Harry, and believe it or not, there was a story that Horrible Harry brought a snake to school one day from recess, and that actually happened to me. And I brought a snake into recess, and it stuck ever since.
And ever since then, he's been Horrible Harry. Hey, you played with Christian McCaffrey at Stanford. You got a favorite memory of Christian McCaffrey in your time in college?
Honestly, just seeing the person that he was off the field, to be honest. He was an unbelievable leader, and took his schoolwork very seriously. He was a professional in all things that he did. So that was very inspiring to see.
You've been in Western New York long enough. You got a favorite place for wings in Buffalo yet?
Bar-Bill is my favorite place for wings currently.
This guy knows what he's talking about. He knows a thing or two.
It's a fun time to go there. Oh my! Am I already at 90? Uh-oh.
Yeah. See, this is what happens. Distractions. This is the point, people. Best advice you ever got from a coach about football?
I would just say a never give up type thing. And hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
How much does Coach McDermott clap during one game?
Enough to hurt all of our hands, I would think.
His own, especially, if you've ever watched. When people say the Stanford Cardinals versus the Stanford Cardinal, do you just cringe inside when that happens?
It doesn't. Oh, I messed it up, Chris.
There it is.
Again.
See, but the good news is no matter how much time it took, we know you can do it. The proof is in the pudding. You can do a Rubik's Cube. The problem is when I'm in your ear barking these nonsensical questions, look what happens.
I know I had the whole white side done. I worked up both of these sides. I was just on the top finishing, and I don't know at the end there, I think I just turned it one way wrong. After you asked me, I think a question about McCaffrey, I was trying to think of a better answer.
See,
and it just went away. So I'd have to start back over from the bottom again. It'd be another 2 minutes before I'd probably solve it.
And here's the deal: while we're having fun with it, and while it's a fun activity for you and I, and for JC to be a part of, the truth about the situation is this: you're trying to do something. You're trying to put your attention and your focus on one thing. And here's something else taking your attention away. I'm a distraction to you, whether I'm in a car, whether I'm on a Zoom, whether I'm in your ear on the phone. And that is the message to come out of today, that you might not know where the distraction comes from, but obviously it's going to take your focus away from what you're trying to do. JC, Harrison, I can't thank you guys enough for being with us. Thanks for your time. Thanks for both of your stories. We appreciate you guys being with us today. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, we want you guys to share this with your family, your friends, with your classmates, with anybody that it can help. Please visit trafficsafety.ny.gov for more resources. We want you to like, to share, to subscribe to all the social medias in today's presentation. Special thanks to JC, to Harrison, to the Buffalo Bills, to the GTSC, and to SAD. Thanks for being with us this afternoon. My name is Chris Watson from the New York State Public High School Athletic Association.